Joining us now here on the scene, Mary Schiavo. She is a CNN aviation analyst, former Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Transportation. We also have Cedric Leighton. He's a CNN military analyst, retired Air Force colonel. Thank you both for being here with us on this morning as we cover this unfolding tragedy. And I do just want to reset for everyone who's waking up here on the East Coast. Mary, help us understand what happened here. We know these two planes collided. It's not something, thank the Lord, that we see very often in this country. What happened last night?
What happened last night is American Airlines being flown by PSA Airlines, a Canadair regional jet, 700, holds up to 70 people with 64 on board. It was coming into land, as happens, every few minutes all the time. There were several planes in the air. It was a busy airport. I landed here myself at 7:30. It was very dark, very cold, a little bit bumpy wind, but weather wasn't really a factor in the accident. Also operating in the area was an Army helicopter. It is reported that it was a training mission. There were lots of helicopters in D.C. ferry around VIPs and all sorts of folks, but this was a training mission. The air traffic control tower specifically asked, it's reported, did ask the helicopter if the helicopter had this American Airlines flight in sight. That's very important. That's very telling. It's a key piece of evidence because the aircraft, the commercial passenger service aircraft, are always under full air traffic control and what's called instrument air traffic direction. So that was flying exactly as the tower, or should have been flying exactly as the tower instructed. There's no indication it was not. So the helicopter was doing what's called see and avoid. The tower said, do you have this aircraft? And get in line or fly in behind it. So it was supposed to find this aircraft in the air, see it, and then fall in behind it.
And of course, we can hear the helicopters overhead right now. And just to give everyone a sense of where we're standing, we can also see the lights from the boats that are part of this search and rescue operation. At this hour, officials have not updated. We're still waiting to see at what point this may become a search and recovery operation, because again, we know that no survivors have been pulled from the water. But Cedric Leighton, this river, it's an incredibly beautiful stretch, right? I mean, behind us also, I doubt the viewers can see it, but we can see the Washington Monument, the United States Capitol. At the other end of the mall is the Lincoln Memorial. This is a beautiful approach. Oftentimes these small planes will take this absolutely beautiful approach down the river, past all of these gorgeous DC landmarks. The other thing we also know, Cedric, if you live here, is that there is constant helicopter traffic over this segment of the river. It's often extraordinarily low. I know when I sometimes have visitors in town, many of them are taken aback by how loud the helicopter noise is, how many there are, how low they fly. Tell us a little bit more about what this specific helicopter does, what the unit that was flying it does, what they may have been training for, and how this could have happened.
Yeah, Casey, this helicopter, the UH-60, which is a Black Hawk helicopter, belongs to the 12th Aviation Battalion, which is located at Fort Belvoir, Davison Army Airfield, to be specific. And what the unit's mission is to fly VIPs and other necessary things around the various posts and bases here in the D.C. area. They fly a lot of people in and out of the Pentagon. They fly a lot of special missions for various entities in and around the National Capital Region. And they also provide a service, a logistical service for the Pentagon and for other military units. So it's a critical unit, and it has had a very good safety record up until this particular incident. They've done a lot of training. There's been a lot of aerial activity in the last week to 10 days out of Davison Army Airfield and several other installations. So there's been a lot of practicing going on for these pilots. We don't know exactly what the nature of this mission was. It almost certainly was some kind of a training mission. We don't know whether the pilots were familiar with this area, if they had just been newly assigned to the unit, or if they were experienced pilots in this particular area. So these are things that are going to have to come out, but it is one of the premier units that ferries VIPs around. Luckily, no VIPs on board the aircraft, the helicopter that crashed, but that is always a big risk. And you mentioned a lot of helicopters around here. Go down any of the interstates in this area, and you will see the helicopters come in and out of some of the locations here. And we get used to it by being here, but there's always a danger in aviation, and that's something that we're seeing right now, unfortunately.
Well, and let's not forget that for the family members of those crew members, they are VIPs. These deaths, every single one of them, an enormous tragedy. Again, we should say there's been no survivors pulled out yet so far, but we are waiting on word of the condition of all of the people who are on both of these planes. Cedric, you mentioned something to me earlier last hour about what it's like and how you focus when you're flying a helicopter and why that might have impacted things, because as Mary noted, the pilots were asked, do you have visual confirmation? Can you see this plane? Where are helicopter pilots normally focused as they're flying a mission like this?
Normally they're focused, and this may not be something that's logical to people who don't fly, but they're normally focused on the ground, because one of the things that a lot of helicopter pilots do, especially in the military, is they fly what's called nap of the earth. They fly right along the surface of the earth at very low altitude. So they're used to looking down, not necessarily looking either sideways or up, and that is one of the key things that is really important, to note, that they may not have seen the right aircraft. When they were told by air traffic control, did you see this particular aircraft? Did you see it? They said yes. They replied affirmatively, but they may not have seen the correct aircraft.
Right. And for people who don't live in this area or perhaps don't fly into this airport, it is worth noting that the traffic is pretty constant. It's an incredibly busy airport, and even for this particular type of jet, this CRJ, there's a number of them that fly because of the nature. This airport services a lot of, it's honestly here because members of Congress want to be able to fly. There's all these small flights coming from small cities across the country that use these jets. I mean, as a political campaign reporter, I've flown to, all over the country to all sorts of small cities on these planes and taken this exact approach myself many times. Mary, I want to play what we have from the air control tower from the FAA, the interaction between them, and then we'll talk about it. Let's watch that.
Patch 25, get CRJ in flight. Patch 25, pass line is CRJ. Q017. I don't know if you caught earlier what happened, but there was a collision on the approach in the 33.
So there you could hear the air traffic controller instruct the helicopter pilot to fly behind the plane, and then you could hear him react when he figured out what happened. What did you learn when you listened to that?
Well, I learned, several things. One, that they were flying with at least communication with air traffic control. The air traffic controller was certainly trying to keep all the traffic separated, as is the job of an air traffic controller. The aircraft from the transmission clearly had priority, was going into land. It would have priority and under total air traffic control. And given maybe perhaps even just a second or more of time, they might have realized, the plane is right there and taken evasive measures. And the helicopter would have been much more maneuverable. And of course, the aircraft could have taken evasive maneuvers if they saw it. They probably didn't. Remember, the aircraft is a low winger. The wings are below. There's, as I always remind people, there's no rear view mirror on the airplane. And there actually have been discussions over the years to put cameras that you can see a 360 around the plane.
We have that in our cars.
Right.
You'd think that would be something that would be standard for pilots.
No, there was a lot of discussion on that after 9/11, actually. But and then that lets us know that the air traffic controller was, reminding the helicopter, do you have it in sight? Because the helicopter was doing, old-fashioned flying, at least at that part of see and avoid.
Let's take we have a little bit of new information from a witness to this midair collision. Let's listen to that. Watch.
I looked back again just to see if I could maybe see it land. And this was 3 seconds later, and at that point, it was banked all the way to the right. I would say maybe past the right, past 90 degrees. I could see the underside of it. It was lit up a very bright yellow, and there was a stream of sparks underneath it. It looked like a Roman candle.
It looked like a Roman candle, he says.
Well, and that gives us, more clues. Just so many of these ear witness, eyewitness, and recordings give so many clues. But the fact that it was a Roman candle means that there was a fire. The fuel tanks, when they're in the wings, were perhaps pierced. But whatever happened at that point. And other witnesses in the video show the flash point in the fire. But since it was a Roman candle, it was on fire, and probably at that point a lot of damage had been done and it was not controllable.
Cedric, a helicopter like this, give us a sense of, how big is it compared to the plane, this particular type of bird?
So it's smaller, generally speaking, than the CRJ aircraft, and it may have been difficult. Well, I think it was absolutely difficult for the pilot of the airplane to see the helicopter. I don't think the pilot of the airplane was focused on the helicopter at all. The helicopter pilot should have been able to see the airplane. But we don't know what else was going on, and like we mentioned earlier, was there something else that attracted his attention, his or her attention at that particular point in time?
All right.